Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I have a special treat for all you fans of the Lost Boys, because I will be interviewing G. Tom Mack, aka Gerard McMahon, the man himself who sings Cry Little Sister on the Lost Boys original motion picture soundtrack. You know the song with the children's choir, "Thou shalt not kill." I'm having him on the show today. I'll tell you something, I did my research. This guy has had an interesting career because he started out as like a R&B based popster with a Chicago-like sound. He had Chicago's producer on his first album, and then he shifted to more guitar-oriented rock later. And of course, Cry Little Sister was out of left field because it was a dark, ominous goth tune. And he's just done all these different sounds, and he's a very talented guy, multi-instrumentalist and so forth. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff, and it's truly an honor. I can't wait. So yeah, here is my interview with G. Tom Mack. Hey, G. Tom.
Hey, Tommy, how are you?
I am great, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, yeah. Moving from one thing to the next, yeah, but, it's all good.
Absolutely.
Where are you? Are you in California?
Yes, Redding, California.
Oh, you're up north then, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know where that area is, of course, yeah.
Yeah, the countryside.
Redding. Yeah, it's not far out of San Francisco, right?
Yeah, it's between San Francisco and Sacramento.
Right, that's right, I remember now.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, all good in your world?
All good in my world, yes, sir. This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Of course. I'm glad we were able to do it.
So, going back in time, I was reading that your family moved you from England to New York when you were 11, and then later Kansas, and that's where your interest in music began?
Well, I've always had an interest in music since the time I'm 5 years of age. I was always listening to music, absorbing it, and what have you. But I think the seriousness started to kick in, upon coming to New York, and really sort of felt the actual moving from my country had a lot to do with it. And I already knew about rock and roll music at that point, obviously, and just American music, soul music, and all that stuff. So coming to America was you had more radio, you had all that stuff going on in the culture, and New York was a sort of melting pot for all that great stuff. But then moving to Wichita, Kansas, because my dad got a job there, and it was sort of one of those things, let's discover a Midwest lifestyle, and boy, did we ever. And but it was there I met some really good musicians who were much older than me, meaning much older. They were like 18, I was like 12, 13. Mm-hmm. But they sort of, I've already started to play guitar, and this guy down the road was teaching me chords and some riffs and, all of that stuff. I didn't really want to take lessons with my parents had advised me to do, and I just couldn't be bothered with that. I just wanted to know how to do this stuff so I could rock it out, So it was just a very interesting time there because I didn't really, I had this British accent, and it was just sort of, that I didn't understand what they were saying, and it was a lot of time to myself,
Yeah.
So, but that I discovered, playing music, practicing music, and realizing I had a voice, and then later on realizing I could write songs.
Yeah. How many instruments can you play overall?
I'm a good keyboard player, good guitar player, really good bass player, And I played flute decently. So that, and drums, I could have been good. There was about 5 of them. I get around. But my main instruments are guitar and piano. Those are the things that, my writing tools. And also, it's just something I've been able to do well.
5. That's good. That's really good. Do you remember the first record you ever bought?
I do. And it was a record called Lend Me Your Comb. It was on the Sun. I had no idea what it was. Mm-hmm. But I knew about Sun Records in America. And I don't know how I knew about Sun Records. I know that Elvis Presley was on it, but I just happened to be in this shop, and it said, Lend Me Your Comb by Carl Perkins. And I didn't know who he was, but the record looked, but I knew about Sun Records. And I think my dad had made mention of it because of, it was a place in Memphis, Tennessee. And my dad was really into a lot of different kinds of music as well, even though his era was more Frank Sinatra and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Which
was good. I gravitated to that later on in life as well. But so anyway, I took the record home, and it was a completely nothing what I thought it would be. It was more rockabilly or something, but I liked it. And then there was a flip side of it. I can't remember what it was, but that was the first actual record, what you call a 45 that I bought, and it was sort of in that. Music was already starting to change in the early 50s,
Right.
It was kind of, I was a young lad, and everybody was older than me, but I was gravitating to it, gravitating to the things that the older guys, the older kids like,
Yeah. And, of course, British invasion happened, and Motown was happening at that time.
Yeah. And I was, that was sort of the beginning of that, and I was definitely loving those sounds, and you pick out all the parts, and I could tell what the bass was doing. I could do, I actually later on, when I got into this band, when I was 13, 14, I think one of the biggest things that they had me was my voice, and I could pick out all the parts and show everybody, this bass part goes like this, or, this guitar riff is that, and what have you, so.
Yeah.
I kind of had a keen ear at that point.
Do you remember the first concert you ever attended?
Yeah, it was James Brown.
Nice.
Utah, Kansas. Yeah. I was probably 2 other white people in the audience, which was baffling to me because I thought, well, why aren't there more white people? I went with a mate of mine who was a schoolmate who was black, and he said, want to go see James Brown? Because he knew I liked James Brown. I said, yeah, that'd be great. And my parents were cool about it. They drove us there. And it was a time where it was kind of like, questionable, but not to my parents because they just didn't buy into any sort of racial thing. They were kind of shocked by it when we came to America.
Yeah.
Everywhere were the racial barriers, what have you. But, it was unbelievable watching James Brown. He went into a coma watching this guy do what he did, singing like he did, performing. You go, how the hell do you do that?
I know. Nobody, he took the soul music and just floored it, is what he did. It's hard to describe it.
Yeah, he did. I mean, it's the reason Prince did what he did. It's the reason so many artists went on. He was he had a profound effect on, well, obviously it was black then, but it certainly he had that incredible ability to cross over.
Yeah, and you later played the R&B clubs in Harlem, right?
Yeah, when I went back to New York, I was probably about 17, I think I was, 16, 17. And I took up the bass, and I got a gig in this all-black band, all-soul band, and then one of the saxophone players was white. And we did a lot of notice, like Staple Singers covers, Aretha Franklin covers, and that's where I really got to become a good bass player, And the drummer was just unbelievable. The band was, it was a cover band, but it was just, we packed it in every night, and I was merely just singing backing vocals at that point, and then every once in a while I'd be, teaching, working with the singer, who was a female singer. They were like, God, I've got this soulful voice, dude. Why don't you start singing? I said, no, I'll just play bass. I didn't want to be start to put my voice into that thing. I was already starting to write songs at that point. And, but yeah, that was a pretty cool time. It was a dangerous time in New York, I can tell you that. But it was filled with just so much, it was exciting, music. I just loved all kinds of music. I never was locked into, one thing. I love, obviously, coming up as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Eagles and all those, obviously from my own country. We already knew about that when it became the British invasion thing. But it was, as all of them, as I got to meet most of these guys later, it was just, when they got to come to America, they were all, in their early 20s, and it was just so incredibly amazing to them in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. So it was a different version for me because I was much younger. And we had moved here, and we were going to be living here. And it was my dad's long life intention. I always say we moved over here because he loved the music of America, which is true.
Yeah. And then you were in L.A. and you became Jackson Browne's touring bassist for a while.
Oh, it's a spell. It was one of those things where I had gone out there to give it a go. There was a producer who took a liking to my work, a guy named Cy Mitchell, and I'd been in L.A. once before, and he came and saw me with my band, and he said, listen, if you ever decide to go solo, I'd love to produce you, because I'm not too crazy about your band. But he said, you wrote those songs? I said, yeah. So I rang him, and he said, we got some studio time at Columbia Records late at night, and we went to the studio and cut demos, but I was running out of money, and it was just there was this guy next door, his name was David Lindley, who was witch acting for a long time. And he kept hearing, I was crashing on somebody's couch, and there was a piano in the house. And I was banging on the piano, writing and playing bass and guitar. And got a knock on the screen door one day. He said, is that you? You playing all this music? And I thought, oh my God, I'm playing too loud. He said, no, it's great. He said, my name's David Lindley. I'm playing with Jackson Browne. You want to come out and audition? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I learned all the songs and went out to use a Malibu, and I borrowed someone's station wagon, or rather, it was a VW, and went out and auditioned, and he seemed to like what I was doing, because I could sing backing vocals and play bass and play a bit of play piano when he wasn't doing, he's playing guitar. And so it was just short, sort of, unplugged kind of tour at that time, but it was, he's still a mate of mine. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Oh, that's great, yeah. He's a very talented, introspective writer, I think.
Oh, yeah. He really is. And, it was a great learning experience, because here he is, this guy. I was just really, my songwriting had just come into play at that time. It had been, but not to the point where it was really, it was good, but it wasn't, it just got better as things do. If you have that energy, you not get better as a writer. And I learned a lot by learning those songs, was with you. It's not like what I went on to do style-wise, but it was just incredible, his structures and more importantly, his lyrical sensibilities. So,
yeah. So how did you end up in Colorado?
I was in a band, the band in Kansas, we went out there and did a summer residency at many different clubs. You know, we play a week in one club, cover that. But we were really good. We had a following, and people really, you know, gravitated. We would pack out these clubs every night. You know, we'd get like sometimes it would be a week's time, and other times it would just be four nights, and then we'd go on to the next town. And we ended up played a lot in Denver and in Boulder at that point. And I really liked it. And then I met a girl. And then I made my mind up to, like, maybe I should move out there. And I got in another band shortly after that. I just made it my business to move there for a while. And one thing led to another. And I was, before you knew it, I was, you know, still playing in a cover band, but I was writing better. And I was just every day just writing and just honing my craft at that. And then I put a band together where all I did was original material. And eventually got signed by this guy who produced the band Chicago. His name was James Garcia.
Yeah.
And which wasn't probably the right match for my music, because my music at that point was kind of Bowie meets T-Rex, meets a little bit of Elton John at that time.
Yeah.
You know, so it was, it was a bit edgier, you know, eclectic, if you will, but had certainly had this pop elements to it. No question about it. But it was, it was just another band that got a lot of. It was a very soulful band too. I mean, it was half the players were black, and the other, you know, I played piano and sang, so I could just get up and sing. And had two female backing vocalists, and you know, we really cranked away and had got this tremendous following. And James came one night to hear us perform and was taken by it and signed us to his record label, which was called Caribou Records, which was a part of Columbia Records.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just not when the record was done, I couldn't even listen to it. It was just so homogenized.
Yeah.
So it was called Gerard.
Yeah, the first single was Hello Operator.
Yeah, it was. And it did okay. I mean, it was charting, but it was just so that, you know, there was a great review by, I think it was John Perellis, or could have been John, one of the New York Times writers, who actually made it his business to come up to, I was on tour, and we were in Hartford, Connecticut. And the review went something like, if only they would have recorded this artist live and put that record out, this would be something incredible. He said, however, the slipped down version, because he was reviewing the album, he was not reviewing the live show. He says, but this slipped down, the vocal's not really what he is. Whatever he said. Version of what I just saw was two different bands, and there's two. Somebody got it right, and a lot of the other reviews, you know, they were just saying how much it was Chicago influence in that. Well, of course, it's got to be Chicago. And I mean, listen, they're a good band and all that stuff. That's not what I was doing, you know.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, it was a first entrance into the gateway.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, you were honing your craft and trying something out of the realm. But then you shifted to a more guitar rock-oriented sound because it was the changing of the times, too. Yeah,
I you know, it wasn't that I wanted to change of the times that much. I just sort of was going there anyway. Before, you know, just in the advent of punk, I loved it. I thought, wow, this is so refreshing. And I was already I wasn't doing punk necessarily, but borderline, I mean, I was kind of like, you know, I always had this impression, if Steely Dan and the Sex Pistols were to be in my realm of what I do, that's kind of where I was going, you know what I mean? Because I always did keyboards, and I played guitar, and I said, you know, let's thrash this out a bit more. And that's when I started writing just just an array of different songs. And then I come back to California for the second time, and to give it another go after the first round didn't work out with the first producer, meaning the Cy Mitchell guy. And for no other reason, it was just, the record labels thought I was a great writer and thought my voice was unique, but they didn't think it was quite ready. And so, and they were probably right. But I basically just, this time around, came out, had hardly any money, and the first Billy Joel's old manager took a liking to me and got me a movie to do with a guy named Jerry Bruckheimer, and it was my first film, a film called Defiance, and it was literally, until I had that, I was 3 months behind my rent, and I was just thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And then all of a sudden it became this buzz in town about my songwriting. And, before you knew it, Kiss was recording a song of mine.
Yeah.
This one, and it just became like this. It wasn't like I was, a staff songwriter at a publishing company, but it was definitely I was getting attention in that area, and having that movie, which was sort of kind of a B movie, gang movie, if you will, back it was sort of along the lines of Warriors and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But in retrospect, I wrote and sang 5 songs in that movie, and just kind of moved on, having no idea what kind of money you made in that work. And I was going, oh my God, I could see this being a good living, but I was, but things were kind of coming my way at that point. Cameron Crowe selected my song "Look in Your Eyes" for Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Great song.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it just started getting more, calls to do movies. And I put this Blue Roo album out, which got critically acclaimed. And
I like that one. That's a great.
You're aware of my earlier work. You're not just aware of one song.
No. I'm a music aficionado. I love rock music,
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, where did "Cry Little Sister" come from?
Well, it came from a movie that
of course
presented to me when I had moved back to New York in '84, and because I've kind of had it with LA. I just thought, I always loved New York, and so I went back there. And come around '86, and I was still doing some film stuff and a lot of writing songs, with other artists like Carly Simon, and this one and that one at the time. But Joel Schumacher, who was already a fan of my work early on, got a hold of me through the head of music at Warner Brothers Pictures and asked me if I'd write the theme song to this movie. And I knew his work from DC Cab, and I also knew that he wrote the script to Car Wash.
Mm-hmm.
And I had met him. He came to a gig of mine back in the day in LA. So they were just in the middle of shooting the film, and he sent me on the script to take a look at to see if I'd get inspiration from it. And I did. And I started to. It's the first time I'd ever done that. I'd probably done about 11 movies up to that point.
Right.
And the first time I actually didn't get to see the film, I just was inspired by things that were going on in my own life and by script, because it was really very cool. I loved it where horror and humor kind of met in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just got up one morning after reading the script and just started to bang on my piano, went over my guitar, wrote a bit on that, and just before you know it, up at the studio, just started to get it into shape and started working on the lyrics and finished it up in a few hours, and then demoed it and sent it out to him. And he got back to me a few days later. He was saying, "How did you know?"
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And he said, you just nailed my theme song to the movie. And, I mean, you know, I was shocked because I thought, I liked it, but it's, you know, you never know what it's going to look like. The film may just be so not right.
Yeah.
Because it's the way the texture is of the actual film, of the look of it. Anyway, it went, and it was just shocking to me when I saw the film for the first time. And I went to LA and started to place the song in the movie. And it was nothing that I thought it would look like. I mean, my vision of the movie, the script, was completely different to you. So I always say, I don't know if I would have written that song had I just looked at the film and then went away and wrote something.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the song has a really specific sound, unlike a lot of stuff you had done earlier to that point. Where did it come from, the music?
Well, I was working. There was a friend of mine who's a jazz musician. Actually, he's a really good vibraphone player, and he's pretty renowned. He's in New York. He's a bit older than me, and but his name's Michael Manieri, and we had studio spaces right next to each other in this particular building, and he was knocking out this sort of sound in what was a new instrument he got that I was using as well, called a synclavier, and it was just this, you know, there was only a few of them around, and they were the high-end sampling machine. You could mix sounds together. It was a lot easier to do it than just the regular sample, you know, the things that they did have available at that time. Mm-hmm. So he had that beat going on, and I said, wow, that's doom. And I just said, wow, it works. That could work. And I took it. I said, do you mind if I take that away and just start to work on this? And I said, that beat is just great, and that sound is great. So I just built on top of that, and you know, put some other keyboard parts down. I went back into his studio, and he laid some textures down, and then I'd go back into my studio. We were literally across the hall, and we would go, you know, and so we ended up just, you know, before I knew it, when we finally went into making the final master production of it, the demo had already laid it out pretty well, and I think we did a demo with the synclavier, and I did, and so he and I, you know, co-produced it together, and yeah, and it was a great, you know, it was a really, you know, it was so interesting. He looked back, I speak to him occasionally. He said, my God, he said, you know, it's interesting. People say to me, you're a jazz musician, and yet you went in and produced this thing with G. Tom Mack.
Yeah.
I said, there are no rules, Michael. I said, you always had, and he always did have a real sense of adventure. He wasn't so, he was just, you know, he was a disciplined jazz musician and true to form, but he was also very open, and that's what I liked about him, you know. Mentor, you know. So.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the children's choir?
Oh, when I took the piano, I actually kind of thought it was a strange experience when I came up. I had the choruses down with my vocal, you know, obviously my melody, and then I just, in my head, heard this, you know, what if I had kids just sing this? And then I just had the melody of that, and I thought, then it became comical to me, where I go, have them sing, thou shalt not use, like the Ten Commandments, but only use the word, thou shalt not kill, of the Ten Commandments, you know. So it was one of those things where it was just a play on, I thought, you're either going to love this or you're going to hate it. There's no in between.
Yeah.
And I sort of was, I was kind of humorous to it, even though it's not, you know. I remember laughing about it, going, God, this is so dark, you know. And, but it worked, you know. Nobody else thought it was humorous.
Yeah. It's very effective. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people think about it first thing whenever they think about that song. You know?
Oh yeah, I mean that song has got such a life. It's unbelievable. You know,
Yeah.
and the various covers. You know, Mal and Matthew did a cover last summer of it, and you know, I mean, so many people like Eminem, just people I never would have imagined. You know, I got a lot of props and respect out of that, you know, writing and actually performing that song, my song.
Yeah. Has it been a curse or a blessing for the most part?
Mainly a blessing. I mean, the curse is only because some people think it's the only. Well, not so much now, but in the beginning it was like, wow, he's known just for this song, and he's a one-hit wonder. Well, it was never a hit. It was never on the charts except for it got to number 14 because it got on Radio 1 in England.
Yeah.
It was never, you know, there was a reluctancy on Atlantic Records to release it because they thought it was too futuristic sounding. And I said, well, that's a compliment. And they didn't think it fit into the times, you know, of what they were, you know, they really wanted to have the Lou Graham because he was in Foreigner, which was fine with me. I to be honest with you, I'm glad it wasn't like put out as a single where they pushed the shit out of it and we played all the time on the radio in that format. I think it created a lot more of a substantial artistic statement by just floating in the atmosphere and showing up in clubs and showing up on certain radio stations and just, you know, it's not the, and it wasn't pigeonholed into just the horror thing, you know, it had a whole broader scope than that, and that's why what I intended it to have. So it wasn't just about vampires. Yeah, it's certainly about people finding their family, and within the film, that's what they were doing. They were finding their family that were vampires, and they were all becoming one together. But it's a lot broader. It's much more broader perspective than that. I never ever just write songs that tell the story of the movie anyway. I think that you want to ride the peripheral of the story and the film.
Absolutely. But you took a long break, and then you came back, and now you've got this this Lost Boys musical. So tell me about it.
Well, first of all, where did you get the idea I took a long break?
It said on your Wikipedia that you took a break from touring and performing, and then you came back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't. I took a break from touring, certainly. And you're talking about musically, right?
Musically, I thought, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't. No, I never took a break musically. I was always writing either. You know, I wrote an entire Roger Daltrey solo album. I wrote, you know, working with Robert Plant at one point, and I was always working. In fact, the multiple television shows that I've had to write music, you know, being commissioned to write music for, this, that, and the other. So in that sense, I think what that might have meant is that I took a break from just, you know, being on the road so much. But I find that a bit, you know, I've been going at it since, you know, the early 2000s when I started to just go back on the road and started playing a lot of these Comic-Cons and finding a way in which where those audiences live, you know, in this sort of sci-fi pop cultural world of, you know, what the Comic-Cons and the sort of, you know, conventions, which was great because there was a built-in audience. You showed up, you know, you met with fans, and but anyway, let's get on to your question.
Yeah.
I basically, about 5 years ago, I thought about I should take my background of musical theater that I've studied and just maybe turn Lost Boys into a musical. And I started to think about it for a year. I started writing notes down, started getting ideas. Really not convinced that it could actually work because of the nature of vampires have not really fared well on the theatrical stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to turn a corner in year two and thinking, this could work. And then got a couple of really good producers on board, Broadway producers who were dead into doing it, and another producer who got on board as well. So we need producers that are creative producers and objective, and of course they raise the money and all that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So spending some time working on that, writing the book, which was not the script, but taking it and telling the backstory of how the Lost Boys came together, how David, as an orphan child in Lithuania came to America, just kind of gave a backstory to all of them and how they all meet and how Star comes into the equation and how, Lucy and Sam and Michael end up in Santa Carla,
mm-hmm.
along with everybody else. So it's that's the sort of, that took a while to figure all of that out, and then I started to write the music, and then it just really started to come together. And our producers were all very pleased with what was going on. A lot of rewrites, of course, you go back if you wanted to. That's the whole process and getting something to work. And it's great having real good producers that can give you that objectivity as well. So, and then we were turning the next corner, and then this happened.
Yeah.
Shelter in place. So that shelter in place the Broadway stages that have not had anything on them now for the better part of 12 weeks.
Yeah. Did you have the whole thing scheduled and set to open?
Well, yeah. Well, we were not. As it goes with this stuff. Yeah, we had to schedule the theater, which we were around the corner from, and that was, we were looking at the end of 2021. You have to go to previews and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know much about this, but we were going to do previews down in La Jolla, and then we were going to do either that or in Washington, D.C., and then we'd go to Broadway. But none of that could really happen. None of that can happen right now, but it's hard to know what the world is going to be when it opens back up. Certainly not going to be what it was, but we'll have to wait and see. But everybody is still on board. Nobody dropped out from backing the musical. So but we did put the soundtrack out because as I was performing it live over the last couple of years, it got a lot of well received, and we had these incredible stage screens where you can see, we filmed bits of the musical from rehearsals, and we purposely just made it fit to the entire musical as I perform it live. And it's the last show I did was in Bathgate, Scotland, because there's a documentary being filmed on my life and career right now with a company called Jib Jab Productions. An incredible team, great director Kevin Wells and producer Jordan McKay, and the whole team is just fantastic. And they really come up with an amazing concept for this documentary on me. And obviously the musical was talked about, but I went over there to film for 2 weeks, and I actually got ill. I don't know if I had it, but it wasn't fun. I was, I had to work through it, and just nobody else got ill though. So I don't know.
That's good.
It just felt like I had it, but from all the later, because it wasn't even talked about at that point. It was just so under the radar. This is late February, and then by the time I remember flying back from Scotland, and I flew back to London, and it was all hell broke loose at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I had to fly back to the States. But they're still, they got a lot of footage, and they've been editing, and they've been doing some, they were supposed to come over in April to go to New York and interview with a lot of different people there, and also come to LA and interview various people here in my life, meaning from my artistic life. And yeah, it just sort of got put on that kind of. So 2 projects of mine are on hold.
Yeah, that's terrible. But has Schumacher and everyone involved in the movie given you support for this project?
Especially Joe, who, once I gave him the book, gave him the soundtrack, he said, all I can say is that I want 2 central row theaters to watch this thing 10 times, because all I can say is you created a masterpiece of genius for it. And I thought, OMG, because when I sent it to him, I was nerves on edge,
Mm-hmm.
But for him to validate it, and I mean, I had a couple of critique things, but they weren't. He said, but they were not anything that was things that were drastic.
Yeah, that's great.
But,
yeah, that's great that they're that Joel Schumacher and everyone is showing support, and hopefully it'll come to fruition after all this craziness is done and stuff.
yeah.
You next month you were scheduled to be at Sinister Creature Con in Sacramento. I go there every year. I was looking forward to meeting you there.
Yeah, there was a lot of gigs that got canceled. I remember they were the last ones to cancel, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of interesting. We kept going, they haven't canceled yet. And but they did, I think, around the middle of March or something like that. But they were the last ones of all these gigs that I was set to do throughout the 2020 year and even 2021. It's, so, hey, it is what it is. You just deal.
Yeah, well, if the next one happens again and stuff and they book you, I'll definitely be there. I wanted to ask you...
I played there once before. I think it was, I'm not sure, I think it's the same promoter, but about 3 or 4 years ago, went up there and did a whole thing. They had Lost Boys to screen the movie, and I performed after the film.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
Nice. I would ask you really quick before we wrap this up, why did you go from Gerard McMahon to G. Tom Mack?
Because nobody could ever pronounce my bloody name.
Really?
It's Gerald or Jerry, I didn't think, I had when I came to America, people thought my name was Jerry because my mother would say Gerard, and my dad's Irish, he'd say Jared. So the pronunciation was different between the, but then the nun, when I was going to school, pointed out, oh, it's Gerard. And I'm going, really? And that's how, so I should have really changed it ages ago. In fact, the interesting thing was I almost changed it on the Lost Boys soundtrack. I was going to change it to G. Tom Mack, which was Gerard Thomas McMahon. So that made a lot more sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just change it, and then people go, oh, man, it's a suicide. You committed artist suicide by doing that. And I'm going like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But at that point, this was like 2000. I was making this album, which was called G. Tom Mack.
Uh-huh.
I put the album out independently. It was getting licensed so much, it was ridiculous. Meaning, various songs from that album, it was all those 90s TV shows like Roswell, Felicity. God, the list is so long. But I saw so many licenses come in. I got very rich that year from just that alone. And nobody knew who G. Tom Mack was. And then before you knew it, I was doing gigs, I was doing NPR stations, and then people started figuring it. Then it became like what my history was. It wasn't just some brand new artist, which everybody thought I was. There's some brand new artists, and it was sort of it was an eclectic album that I'm still very proud of. And when Scrubs, the TV series, used it to close out the show, like for like 2 minutes, over a montage, that's when people really knew who G. Tom Mack was. And it still wasn't correlating to Pride of the Sister. So my song Half, which closed out that show, and the song got downloaded 121,000 downloads within 24 hours at that time, when downloads
Yeah, I like the name. You know, it's like a rap name. It's a cool name.
You know, that was the thing everybody was saying. Oh, you gotta be a rapper. I said, so what? I didn't really care. You know, it's like if you would have said Fleetwood Mac, that sounds like a rapper's name too. But he happened to come out before Fleetwood Mac came out before rap. You know?
Yeah, when I was growing up, I went by TJ, which is Tommy Jr., and everyone called me BJ, CJ, DJ, so I started being known as Tommy, and then occasionally I get Timmy or Tony now.
Yeah, right. There you go. So we share a little bit of the same problem.
Yeah. Well, G. Tom, this was such a great honor. Thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope after this quarantine's over, the musical opens and that you get back on the con circuit and performing, and I'll definitely roll through.
Well, thank you so much for the interview, mate, and I look forward to meeting you in the flesh once all of this quarantine and everything we're doing makes the difference is over.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, to have a very safe day.
You as well. All the best. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Well, there you have it. G. Tom Mack. Ain't he a cool dude? Nice guy, great music, wonderful story. I am just in awe of the man and his music. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.